What's up, everyone? Welcome to Armchair CMOs.
Do you want to start over? Because I just have my finger in the camera. Sorry.
We're gonna leave that part in. What's going on? Welcome. How are you?
Doing all right. How about you?
Doing great. Doing great.
Happy Tuesday. We are so off in our recording.
It's cool. No one, just as long as we get it out.
True. It doesn't matter.
All right.
Um,
Kick us off, Jules. Kick us off.
yeah. All right. Lots of stuff to talk about this week. I feel like some weeks we don't know what we're going to talk about until day of, and I feel like this past week we've had like too many things to talk about. So first one up is my totally up my alley. We talk about some ticketing stuff. I used to be a tickets girl. Um, Two big things I noticed this week, not necessarily new, kind of newish, kind of news related. First being Sports Illustrated. Actually, the first part of this is not ticket related, but it's going to come. Um, Sports Illustrated announced that they are the like naming rights partner for the Red Bull MLS soccer Red Bulls, New York Red Bulls um, stadium, um, which is their first ever naming rights deal in like the 70 years that Sports Illustrated has been around. Um, that in itself is big news. But tied to that, Sports Illustrated tickets, which I didn't know was a thing, but is a thing. It launched in 2021. Is going to be like the ticketing partner of the New York Red Bulls. So basically a competitor to Ticketmaster. There's a few other companies in this space. It's pretty competitive. So it's very interesting. I feel like very notable that Sports Illustrated got into this space in 2021. But this is their first like primary ticketing deal. Since 2021, they've only been doing like secondary tickets. So this is definitely like a huge move on multiple fronts for Sports Illustrated. I think that part of this that's very notable is um, both of these deals show, or this one deal, I guess, shows multiple ways that Sports Illustrated is diversifying from just like editorial and publishing, which is what they'd been for 60 something years, probably until 2019. If you remember, or maybe you weren't aware, in 2019 they were having like some financial trouble, or like leading up to 2019. So they got bought by a group called Authentic Brands, which basically marks the start of all of this diversification. So I think it's very interesting. It's very smart. I'm interested to see how these things go. Um, One thing that I think is very cool from like a very specifically ticketing standpoint is some of the innovative stuff they're going to be doing with their tickets. Um, so I'm just going to read from this article. It says each fan's ticket will be, oh, it's on blockchain digital ticketing. If you remember, blockchain is like the buzzword of 2019, 2020 maybe. Um, but it basically means that each fan's ticket will be an NFT. So after like if the fan scans their ticket into the game, they can get like very specific personalized promos on their ticket. They can get like post-game highlights on their ticket. I think I read something that every single ticket or every single like event that a fan attends is going to be turned into a little Sports Illustrated magazine cover on their phone, which is I think a cool, interesting way of kind of innovating on like the specific actual ticket. Like all of this stuff I think has been being done. There's like apps for like various arenas. But it's very interesting. I also just read a report like last week for my full-time like actual job about the rise of personalization in marketing and how important it is for companies to be able to like develop and share personalized content for users or fans or whoever. I think Sports Illustrated has like hit the nail on the head here with doing this. So kind of nerding out on this one, but a lot of cool innovative stuff I think is happening.
Yeah, that looks like it makes sense for them, especially considering the issues. I actually heard something that like print might be making a comeback because it's gonna have like people actually want physical things now more than they did before because they're tired. Like we all have digital fatigue. So hopefully this diversification helps the brand and maybe it's ready
Yeah.
for come back to print Sports Illustrated's very near future.
Yeah, they're kind of former glory. Um, okay. And then the second ticket thing that again, this part isn't new. As like Sports Illustrated tickets is not new, but this deal was new. I noticed this week that Vivid Seats, which is another like ticket world competitor, um, has a rewards program, which I never knew. Um, I think that this is so smart. So obviously it's a very competitive space. All of the ticketing partners like Ticketmaster, SeatGeek, Vivid Seats, StubHub, very competitive in terms of getting partners, like the business development side of getting the deals with the stadiums or the teams to be either the primary or the secondary ticket partner. That's been very competitive for a long time. And I think all these companies have been innovating to try to win over those deals. I've never thought about it from the consumer perspective of these companies should also be fighting for loyalty from the consumers. Um, because the secondary ticket market has become so competitive, I feel like so few people in 2024 and 2025, I'm anticipating will be the same way, buy their tickets from the team or stadium themselves. Um, Especially as tickets are becoming like less and less affordable, or fans just like really want to go to the big events where it's like so many resale tickets anyway. I just went to a concert that tickets sold out like last night. The tickets sold out in the first hour. And so pretty much every single person who was in there ended up buying resale. um, and it's become a huge thing, and everyone's just shopping for the cheapest price on the secondary ticket market. Um, which means there's no loyalty to a specific app. You're just shopping wherever you can get the cheapest price or wherever the best tickets available. Um, and considering all of these ticket partners make their money on fees, you need to be pulling in customers to be buying tickets off your app. And I think that one area that clearly they've been missing, but I didn't think about until this past week, is loyalty programs. So Vivid Seats they launched in 2019, a loyalty program that's like buy 10 tickets and you'll get the 11th free, obviously with like some fine print. Um, but I like that it's really clearly stated. It's very clear how the rewards program works. That would definitely make me, I go to live events all the time. That's like my favorite hobby. And it's not just for sports, it's across all sports, music, comedy. Um, that would definitely make me like check at least Vivid Seats first to see if I can get the ticket to the event I want to go to. Um, so like I said, this launched in 2019. None of the other ticketing apps have come up with an answer to this, have like launched their own loyalty program. Um, I think that SeatGeek, given their all of the like brand campaigns they've been doing and the influencer marketing that they've been doing over the last few years, I would have thought that they would be kind of on like a front edge of doing something like this, but they don't have one yet, as far as I know. So anyway, not news, but news to me, and I just thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up on my Amex right now. Like they have, I'm pretty sure that there was one of the rewards was for one of those places.
Say that again?
Like, you know how when you get a credit card and you have all these Amex
Yeah.
offers and stuff. So one of the offers was for one of these companies because I saw it because I paid my Amex bill after I bought tickets for us to go to the Heat game.
Mm,
Damn, I wish I had known that we had this offer. I could have gotten a deal on these tickets.
yeah.
But now I don't see it. I can't find it. Maybe it expired.
So yeah, I think that's a good point. That's another way that they're probably trying to like win over customers, like customers as opposed to teams. They'll also, like I just mentioned, SeatGeek has been doing like big brand campaigns. I think it's SeatGeek who does that campaign that's like, I don't know, there's a commercial that's kind of funny. I don't know if it's SeatGeek or someone else, but it's like basically anti-Ticketmaster campaign that complains about like maybe the fees or something like that. SeatGeek also does like a ton of influencer marketing. So it's not like Vivid Seats is the only one doing anything in this space, but I think a loyalty program is so interesting as a tactic.
Yeah, like what's the other new one that came out? Like Game Time app or something like that? I see
Oh yeah,
TikTok all the time.
yeah. Yeah, I'm just so surprised. Like loyalty programs, I think are pretty easy to implement. They're not easy to get right. Um, I read a whole the woman who designed who like did the UI for the Vivid Seats um rewards program, Carrie something maybe. She did a whole write-up on how they launched it in 2019 and basically had to iterate a ton and like revamped it in 2021. So it's definitely not hard to get, or it's definitely difficult to get right, I think, or it takes a lot of time to get right. But considering they've been doing it for 5 years, I'm surprised nobody else has launched one yet.
Yeah. I don't see Vivid or StubHub, but I do see that they have this thing called, there's a website called eventticketcenter.com. Never heard of it, but it seems like just like one of those other sites. But
Where are you looking?
I'm on their website now, but it was one of the rewards that was listed on my MX offers thing.
Oh, interesting. I would have like 100% guessed that that was like a scam.
It better not be a scam, MX.
Yeah, that's true. They should probably vet their offers. Anyway, yeah, I'm just over here geeking out about tickets, to start the episode. Um, the other thing I guess that you and I were both paying a lot of attention this week, probably like most other people who have like even a remote interest in sports, is Travis Hunter. Won the Heisman, which obviously puts him in the center of the media world all week.
I'm in the big chair for sports in December. Shout out to Travis Hunter. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, big part of Dion, Coach Prime, Sanders taking over at Colorado and bringing his sons and Travis Hunter from Jackson State and balling out the past few years. Um, he's got a great story, great moment with a great speech at the Heisman ceremony. But a couple things I want to talk about from as it relates to a brand marketing perspective as it relates to him individually. One from an NIL standpoint, Deion Sanders Jr. actually was on a podcast, 0 to 60 podcast, this week, and kind of revealed some information that was kind of groundbreaking and eye-opening for people who are in the space or just fans or even casuals who don't even understand kind of like the details of NIL, but for people like us who have lived it and experienced it, like for him to reveal this information was a big deal. So Deion Sanders Jr. said that Travis lives off his endorsements and actually does not take any money from the collective that the donors put into for Colorado, and instead also has money left over from his endorsements to put money into the collective to help pay his teammates NIL revenue and NIL funds, let's just call it that, which I thought was very interesting. I think that is like, a super one, it's a testament to his character, right? Because you don't have to do that. Like, you
100%.
can keep all
Yeah.
the money for himself and just stash it. But two, you wonder like, is that a strategy that, because of the relationship with Dion, maybe Dion asked him to do that, or maybe convinced it. I don't know. I think I prefer to give him credit for it and see that it was his idea. But also it adds to the team chemistry and shows that he's a team guy that like that keeps people happy and keeps those guys there that they want to win.
You,
In that same vein, in a more unfortunate light, is like that's kind of a concept that is being introduced with head coaches in college football. Um, Brian Kelly at LSU actually committed to match up to $1 million to their one of their collectives, I think. And then what USA Today is kind of referring to as a loser's tax. Examples I've heard of so far, Oklahoma State's coach Mike Gundy was basically suggested that he restructure his deal or resign, which included putting some of his salary that he was promised or on the way to receive to have that get reinvested into helping from an NIL standpoint. Same thing happened at Florida State. Norvell, the coach at Florida State, they had a terrible, very terrible season in terms of underachieving. So he's committed 4.5 million of his salary to go back into NIL fund. So interesting concept overall. Like dope to hear Travis Hunter's perspective and his involvement in that kind of idea of having people within the program put money that they're getting back into NIL to help either their fellow student athletes or the players that play for them as the coach.
you know what this makes me think of? Um, I feel like this is just the college version of players helping a team manage like salary cap problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like Travis Hunter wants to win.
Mm-hmm.
And to win, he needs good teammates. And to pull good teammates to that school, they need to be getting NIL money. Like now that that's a factor in recruiting. Um, so to for Travis Hunter to have like good teammates to help them win, there needs to be NIL money available. And so it's similar to like pro players taking less money than they could be getting in order to have more room under the cap to pull in other strong players or to like keep other players on the team. Like that seems very similar to me.
Yep.
And it's really interesting the way like college and pro are kind of converging now with like man NIL deals and the athletes being able to get paid. It's very interesting that like a lot of the same kind of dynamics we're starting to see play out.
Yep.
I do like I think you said at one point like it'll be interesting to see if other players start doing this. Like we're seeing obviously coaches doing it, either whether they're doing it voluntarily or not. But like it makes a lot of sense. We've seen it in pro, and I think there's even less of a it's maybe like less direct. It's not like one player handing another money, but it's a similar idea.
Yeah. I mean, one, I think it'll be interesting to see if more stories like this come out, whether it's real or whether it's fabricated, because this is kind of a big deal. The fact that he's giving his money that in that way, people will either say, "Oh yeah, well, we were doing it too," or they'll say, "Oh yeah, we just started doing it." With some of the big players that are coming. But then also, like you said, the convergence of pro and NCAA being the same. It's a big reason why some other news we didn't really talk about because it's not on the outline for tonight. But Bill Belichick going to UNC he feels
Mm,
comfortable that he can navigate this space because he's done it at the highest level. And I think there are a lot of similarities, and I think his experience will definitely be valuable, but it'll be interesting to see.
I do. Okay, if we're gonna quickly go on this tangent, I do also think we've seen this, right? We worked at Georgetown. Patrick Ewing was a professional coach and went into college. And there's not that like we can speak to the intricacies of like
Mhm.
Patrick Ewing's struggles on the day to day, but like there is a big difference between college coaching and professional coaching is more so my point. Um, with like there's you have to worry about your players. What's the word? Oh my God, why am I blanking? Um, like eligibility. There we go. In
Yeah.
terms of like grades, academics, you have to worry about like donors and parents. Like there are additional considerations in college. So I'm very excited to see Bill Belichick navigate all of that.
That would be
Anyway,
I think that like the parent thing, like let's not go on a tangent because I think as someone who has worked in this space and had to talk to parents, uh,
yeah.
I don't I'll be interested to see how Bill Belichick does that.
I mean, I think it's so different. Like they're also like young guys. Like you're coaching 18-year-olds, not 22-year-olds. Like it's their first time away from home. Like it is a very different job. But anyway,
Okay, back to Travis Hunter real quick.
yes, back to
Also,
the regularly scheduled programming.
back to Travis Hunter's big week. Also announced that he was signing with Adidas. So a couple points on that. Like one, I thought the ad was cool, but it wasn't like really super exciting, like to announce as big a player as we, know Travis to be in college football, but and hopefully it's going to be one of the top few picks in the NFL and the draft. Like the video wasn't that great. The music was like, you would expect to hear music from a popular artist in that. The yellow solid backdrop was, I guess it was Colorado colors, but it looked like a different version of the Anthony Edwards type theme, but it just didn't seem as like exciting as maybe it needed to, you would expect it to be, but also to give them credit, I feel like it's a crazy time for him. Like maybe it was hard to get him, maybe it was rushed because of his schedule. Like he was basically Heisman. I know the season just ended. Heisman, they got a bowl game coming up. Then you got to prepare for the draft. So maybe there's something bigger coming for the draft. But overall, the announcement was good, but it wasn't like big deal in your face to match the hype around Travis right now. The second point I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about is the concept or question of like whether or not Nike fumbled this opportunity to sign Travis, especially considering the relationship with Dion. we're talking about the relationship with Dion. I mean, obviously Shadur is going to get the deal, not Travis Hunter. Like he's going to get his own son the Nike deal, which makes sense totally. Plus, the other important part of it is from a marketability standpoint. Shador plays QB, the most visible position in all of football. Travis is a star because he won the Heisman because he plays both sides, but like that is going to be very unlikely in the NFL. And so without having a good sense of whether he's going to be a receiver who receivers are pretty marketable and pretty, well known and well liked in the NFL compared to cornerbacks, which are like not as high profile. If you don't have the answer to that question, I think it's easier for Nike to say we'll pass. Want to give a shout out to Jordan Rogers because we talk about him on the show a lot, who worked at Nike. And he did a good video where he made some good insights in terms of one, just the idea that Nike can't have everyone because they have a lot of people. They've got a lot of big names. So if you think about the fact that they're getting Shador, getting both of them would have been cool to keep the band together and at least that capacity because they're likely not going to be in the same team next year. But still, and then overall, the idea like superstardom from a marketability standpoint is tough to capitalize in the NFL because they're wearing helmets all the time, right? And the league, Nike's got the league deal, and that's more valuable to them than these individual deals. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And the last point I wanted to make about this Adidas situation is Travis adds to a pretty solid roster of NFL players for Adidas that includes fellow Heisman finalist this year, Cam Ward, who's at Miami, which is also an Adidas school, and Pat Mahomes, Michael Parsons, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, which I think is important because when Nike has the league deal, Adidas has got to do the best to make a splash in the league. So they do that by having some of the best players.
Um, yeah, this was an interesting conversation. I don't, we know I'm like a Nike girl. I die for the Nike like inspirational ads, which I do think there is like a ton of opportunity for here. So from your very first point about like Adidas's announcement video, I think that could have been a lot cooler. Maybe they are planning something bigger for later. Um, but your point of Nike likes to do those big superstar ads, and they like someone who's really well known and has like a star factor outside of necessarily even just their like performance on the field. There could be something to signing Shador because he has the connection with Dion, and like that's just more marketable.
Yep. That's a story that you can tell forever.
Yeah. I was looking to see if there was any data on like what percentage of Heisman winners Nike has signed versus other brands. I couldn't find anything, but I would really love to know that information.
I mean, let's look at it real quick. I'll pull up the list.
Of Heisman winners?
I mean, I'm only going to do off memory a certain amount, like a certain number. I'm not going to be able to go back too far in history. But where's Heisman winner? Can I get the list of
No,
winners?
we're just Googling. So Jaden Daniels won in 2023. He signed to Nike.
Caleb Williams is, I think Caleb Williams might even be, he might even be Jordan, but he might be Nike. I don't know.
Well, Jordan is owned by Nike, so that counts.
But you got to look at it separately. It's different because Jalen Hurts is Jordan. He's not. I mean, Jalen Hurts didn't win the Heisman, but I'm just using that as an example.
And Bryce Young, 2021 Heisman winner, signed with Jordan.
Devontae is a Nike.
You're probably thinking of Bryce Young because it says he's Bryce Young is one of only a few quarterbacks signed to Jordan brand along with Dak Prescott.
Gotcha. I mean,
Anyway,
all of these guys, all the way back through 2010, is all Nike or Jordan, except for when you get to 2010, Cam was Under Armour,
And then Travis Hunter is
Adidas.
Adidas.
I don't
Interesting.
think I don't think anyone else was Adidas. Was Johnny Manziel Adidas? He was Nike. Yeah, he was Nike.
Mm, yeah, he signed with Nike initially, but it seems like there was maybe some tea there because the headline is from 2016 and says Johnny Manziel no longer an endorser of Nike.
That's because he got cut because he wasn't even playing.
Was it Nike that ended it though, or was it? Oh, it was.
Yeah, he got cut. He wasn't even playing by 2016.
Interesting. All right. Well, then this is like a real break from tradition for Nike, which I think is notable. Um, okay. Multiple tangents aside, moving on. I know you want to talk about NBA. We like kind of always have something to say about the NBA. But we've both seen a few headlines, articles, videos, whatever about NBA ratings this year. I think we even might have touched on a little bit in an earlier episode. Um, but we're going to dig in today to NBA ratings.
So shout out to Front Office Sports for putting out something on Twitter that kind of summarize some summarize multiple perspectives on it from different people. So one thing that's been coming up is the gameplay. So people not running plays, are they shooting too many threes? Should they move the line back? That's one perspective of it. Another perspective was they competed with a in like entertaining World Series that was two of the bigger markets in the country. Um, two big markets that also have very prominent NBA teams, LA and New York. And also they competed with like people's attention for the election. I don't really disagree with that. I mean, I don't really agree with that, but we'll come back to that. Um, I feel like just overall, there's just like this idea that the product is just not as good as it used to be. What do you think, Jules? Gameplay, competition with the World Series? Do you think that's like got an impact? What do you think?
I do think I do think competition is a factor this year. I don't honestly don't know that World Series is that big of a thing. Um, I guess your point about the specific markets might be more relevant. Um, but I don't feel like that wasn't like World Series viewership also really low this year. I might have made that up. But I think competition's a lot of it. Like there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Like the election for sure, but also like a lot of other things tied to like the state of our country and just like global news. Like I do think that those are big distraction. Like other sports are growing, which like this claim about the product of the NBA or whatever. Like it could be that nothing is changing about the NBA, but as other trends are picking up, like the WNBA is the fastest growing brand. Like it could be that people who would normally be viewing NBA are viewing WNBA, and that could be due to the novelty of the WNBA versus the product of the NBA. Like I don't know that I have a take on this, but um, like I think competition is a big factor personally.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's like we've talked about it on the show before. There's so much content. But wanted to bring up an argument that Amin that used to be on ESPN, he's part of a podcast called Oddball Hoops. He disagrees with it's about the game, about it being the gameplay. He made really good points about someone who called into the show and said they listen to the NBA shows on the radio, they follow all the NBA media on social media accounts, and when they're giving live updates and breaking news, um, but they haven't watched the game in 3 years. And so Amin's point is like everyone's still looking at ratings as the major driver of whether or not people are paying attention or are fans of what's going on, but they're not really measuring or monetizing these other ways that this person, for example, who seems to be a good um, characteristic of what most people in this age group or this generation are in our oversaturated media market are interacting with the NBA. I think he makes great points, but I do, as someone who's a fan of not only the NBA but the game of basketball, I understand his points, but I do think that there are some issues with the product of basketball that have to be kind of considered. And I'm not just talking about, this conversation's come up in a microcosm of through the lens of this season and the ratings are down this season, but I'm talking about like there's a guy, Xavier Miller on Twitter who made some really good points about kind of like the current state of basketball and how people come up through the game of basketball from their teenage years to college into the NBA is much different than what it was maybe 10, even 20 years ago, right? Like this cultural idea that most of the players that we grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s were guys who came from humble beginnings, who used basketball as a way to change their life and they needed it to make it. Whereas now, because of how much money people spend in, AAU and travel ball and trainers, and it's become this middle class, upper middle class sport where those guys don't aren't as hungry, right? And maybe that shows up in the game, right? I think there is some conversation about what that looks like. It's just a little, they're just built different. And, even we talked about NIL earlier. There's an NIL part of that conversation too. And Penny Hardaway talked about it on a podcast with Zach Randolph and Tony Allen. Like they don't love the game the same way that his generation did. And he as a coach now sees that because, they get NIL money, they're going to be good. They don't need to make it to the NBA. So maybe they don't need to worry about working harder. Maybe they don't need to worry about taking the extra steps to get better. They just don't have the same competitive edge because they don't have to. Whereas like the previous generation of the stars in the 90s and 2000s had to get better because they needed it to feed their families, for lack of a better word. So I
So
don't
I do think there's something to that. I think there's been something to that though forever between college and NBA. I've been a college basketball fan since I was like 11, maybe. I didn't become an NBA fan until like a lot later. And then I only became an NBA fan because of like the personalities, less so the game. Like I can watch endless college basketball games not knowing a single person on the team because I like the game more. But that's been true forever. So there could be something to that Penny Hardaway argument that it's like less competitive and you can see that. And it could be that it's even less competitive than it has been in the past. Like I remember my argument was always like they don't even play defense. Like they just look like they're kind of like jogging up and down the court, like letting each other score. Um, I forget what I was gonna say. That was like a tangent, but um, yeah, I do think that there like could be something to that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the other part that things that people say is the analytics of the three pointers and how that works together. Because it's people say, you know, Lou Williams was a quote that was on social this week of him talking about how he hates the analytics nerds that are in basketball and GM positions that have never played basketball before, but they know math and science. And they say mathematically, taking a three in certain situations makes more sense because if you make it, you get more points. But like it just disrupts the flow so much, which Lou Will made a really good point about like you on a fast break, you take a three, you miss it, it turns into a run out, fast break layer for the other team. And so like it's basically a turnover. So like I think those aspects of the game are also part of which I think, which is the reason why I kind of disagree. I understand Amin's points, but disagree with him. Like didn't I don't want to go on another separate rant because I think that this has something to do with it. But
Wait, okay.
you want me to go? I'm gonna go on a rant real quick.
I think you should because I'm about to circle back to a meeting too.
Okay. So my rant is ESPN has turned into such a talk show based network and not focus on sports highlights that I grew up on. that it's starting to make me not care as much about being watching ESPN. And I say that because like no, like, and I still watch. Like I love the people that are on ESPN that I enjoy watching. I enjoy watching like Dominic Foxworth and some of the Get Up guys. But like my issue is like those guys are on TV for 6 straight hours. Like they're sprinkled in the Sports Center, then they're on Get Up, and then they're sprinkled in the First Take. And they're saying the same things. So it's just a matter of like at what point do you watch them? And instead of not getting highlights, like I because I'm currently unemployed, like my day, I watch the morning Sports Center ESPN run of like an hour Sports Center, an hour Get Up while I'm working out and getting some things done and trying to find a new job or doing some podcast stuff, right? And like I don't remember seeing this crazy clip the other day. The girl, last name Miller from Rutgers, that had the crazy move where she did this
Oh,
Anderson move. Like I saw it everywhere on the internet, everywhere, but I didn't see it on SportsCenter.
Kiyomi.
Yes, but because of the timing, it happened on like maybe what I think it happened on Saturday, Sunday, which is peak college football, NFL talk for ESPN, and they didn't have it. But my point that I was trying to make is maybe in ESPN's defense, they are doing that not talking about as many sports and talking so much about football because people don't care about basketball as much because it's such a lower quality product. Like when I was growing up, I could wake up, I was going to this lady's house before I catch the bus to go to middle school, and every day I would be able to see, if I was there for an hour, I'd be able to see at least 1 to 2 highlights for every single NBA game that happened that night before. I knew what Michael Jordan did. I had access to all the scores because I had no cables at home, so I could not watch any of these games. But I knew I could go to this lady's house in the morning before I catch the bus and see all the games, all the highlights. But now they don't even show all the highlights for all the NBA games.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be LeBron or it's got to be like I don't know. But all that
Okay.
to say, my last point is the game is different because I did see on the scroll, I didn't see a highlight of it on SportsCenter, but on the bottom, they still got the bottom, which I think I will give ESPN credit. The bottom ticker is as high quality as it's ever been. More details, more sports. I love it because I'm not being able to actually see the highlight on screen. I at least can see the score on the bottom. But the score of the Clippers Jazz game was like 144 to 107, which is
Mm,
insane.
yeah. Yeah, both high scoring and I feel like every NBA game that I paid attention to this year, there's like that huge gap. Like they're like very few of them are competitive. Okay. That brings me to 2 points. I want to start with one because I think that was like a solid circle back to me. And I wanted to talk, like really hit home on that point of um ratings are maybe not the best measure of engagement anymore. Because that guy who said he engages with the NBA in like 17 other ways, he just doesn't watch the games. You just said if you don't watch the game, you want to watch the highlights. That wouldn't show up in the ratings.
Right.
But that's still you caring about the game. Um, so I think that's so important because I also think like I said, I think competition's a huge factor. What I didn't say, or I guess I like didn't necessarily have the thought fully formed in my head, but it's not only competition with the other sports and the other news and the other leagues, it's competition with other forms of content.
Yep.
Like I could sit down on a Thursday evening and put on a game of whatever, or I could sit on my phone and scroll through Instagram and pull up my fantasy football app and have a podcast on in the background and be engaging with three other forms of content with all of my favorite leagues and not be watching a game. But that doesn't mean that I'm not engaging. It doesn't mean I'm not buying tickets. It doesn't mean I'm not buying merch. It doesn't mean that the sponsorship money isn't there from whatever. Like it's competition not only with the other stuff going on, but just like with the other content that's being produced,
Yep.
which I think is like so important. We talked about that a lot on here, um, and that a little bit ties into like something that we've seen in a few places. Like maybe that's an answer. Like maybe like the league's modernizing to be able to engage and monetize these other formats is like a key kind of answer to ratings being down. Um, I was going to make another point here, but I lost my train of thought.
I mean, and also it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's this conversation that's been sparked this week has been about ratings, but I'll be interested to see what the attendance numbers are. Like, I actually, considering all of that I just said about the games, and I'm still a fan, and I haven't watched that many games this year, but I actually went to a game. I was in Miami, and I'm a Miami Heat fan, and I actually went to a game, and I'm pretty sure it was sold out. I don't know. Obviously, when we talk about because we talked about tickets earlier, and we talked about all the secondary markets and how people can get, there's so many different ways that people can get tickets. Like, I don't know how many people, just straight up bought tickets through the heat or whatever, but the arena was full enough that it felt like a great atmosphere. And
Yep.
it was the Friday after Thanksgiving, and they're playing the Toronto Raptors. So it wasn't like it was a huge game.
A
So
big gamer. Yeah,
I,
I like on that point, I just listened to a podcast completely unrelated to sports, like absolutely nothing to do with sports, this podcast. And the host was talking about how he went to his Clippers game and he was talking about his experience in the new Intuit Dome. Like there's people who still are going for sure. Like so whether or not they're watching on TV doesn't mean that there's not engagement. Um, I do want to say, and this a little bit ties back to the product. I think this is like the NBA's answer to maybe the product is down, like there's less competition, the regular season's too long. In November and December, there's still so many other leagues playing, so there's a lot of competition from other leagues. Like the NBA Cup was like very transparently their answer to a lot of that.
yep,
And I actually do think like I have kind of mixed feelings on the NBA Cup. But lately I've been feeling more positive about it as like a move that the NBA made, primarily because like the games that I have turned on lately and the scores that I've been paying attention to and the games that have been more competitive where the score isn't like 130 to 100 and like therefore not at all competitive have been NBA Cup games. So like specifically now that we're getting later into like the semifinals and finals and this last week like I definitely watched a few games of like I was paying attention to like who was advancing. Um but I think that like the cup, whether or not fans care, which ties into something else I want to touch on in a second, but like whether or not fans care if their team wins, it's helping just like add some more storylines and helping to pull out a little bit more like hunger from the players and therefore like putting a little bit better product on the court mid-season. Like they do have a very long regular season. So I think that that is like it's doing some things right for the league.
yeah. I think so first of all, we're recording this in the middle of the cup game. End of the first quarter, OKC is up 28-27 over Milwaukee, by the way. Just
That's the game. Yeah.
so yeah, to your point, yes. In game, it's an intense, actually entertaining game. Whether you're a Giannis fan or not, like he's a guy who is a competitor through and through. So I appreciate that about him. So good to see him in it. But wanted to shout out Instagram account Kofi Aboa to just kind of give it some comments, some content commentary perspective on this year's cup, because I do think that I agree that the concept of the cup adds this excitement in the middle of the season. And I do think at the same time that the NBA probably got a little bit of fool's gold last year because the Lakers and LeBron were in it. And to Kofi's points that he made in his video, basically stemming around the fact that there's a conversation about the ticket price being down for the semifinal and the championship games because of a couple factors. It's right before the holidays, which I never thought about. Like last year when I thought when I'm watching LeBron and as I'm a LeBron guy, like I'm excited LeBron's in it, LeBron won it, that's cool. Like I was tuned in. But
You didn't go.
I wasn't gonna go.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
right. But it was easy for the crowd to be pretty full because it's easy to get from LA to Vegas. Like that's not that far of a trip. And you don't have to plan it out. But then we're talking about the teams that were in the semifinals and the finals. So we're talking about the Hawks, the Bucks, the Rockets, and the OKC Thunder, which are like one and a half like one and a half major market. Like Houston's a major market, but OKC, Milwaukee, and Atlanta's a major market too, right? But so long flight from Atlanta to Vegas, okay flight from Houston to Vegas, but Milwaukee to Vegas and OKC to Vegas in the middle of the holidays, you could see how that could be put a damper on ticket sales for this.
I also like this is the part that I get into like how much do fans care? Like I personally, and I could be wrong, could just be like that I'm not seeing this. But the big events that people are willing to travel to because it's not just the game.
Right.
Like there's other stuff happening. Or it's not like you don't have to buy tickets and plan all of your travel last minute. Like the big college like Thanksgiving tournaments, people are willing to travel to, but those are announced well ahead of time so people can travel to them. Like this adds a challenge of like you're like, oh, my team's in the finals, like let me buy tickets and book hotels for like this weekend, which I think is hard around the holidays.
Yep.
Um, but I think like the things that certain tournaments, games, events do well, like All-Star Weekend, the Super Bowl, like the Kentucky Derby, Formula One, like the things that people are willing to travel to is because there's stuff happening across the city. There's activations all over the place. There's events, like there's other engagements happening that I think make these things like destinations to be at, which at least as of yet, or as of my awareness, like the Cup is not doing. So if they're concerned about like getting fans to actually come to this and for ticket prices to not be like $40, then they need to start adding that kind of stuff, which is like unfortunate reality of 2024. But
Yeah.
when you're competing against so many things, even like if someone's going to travel, like they're going to travel to something that's more of an event than just like one game.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are good points. Like I think as far as I know too, like there's no other events, and that's also like it's tough on the NBA as an organization, like as a league, because Christmas Day is a tent pole event, and now they're talking about Christmas Day, their tent pole event, competing with the NFL now. And a week before or a week and a half before, you got to try to get people to be excited about the Cup championship on a Tuesday night, right? Like that's just I think we agree that the cup is, and we had this discussion before we started recording about how we present some marketing problems, and I don't think we realized that this cup is an answer, like an answer to it, right? But I think the cup it needs some help in addition to it, right? Like
Yep.
moving it around. Like, is there a way to have the cup be, predetermined so you give people time to plan for it, right? Like, because like to your point, even those like from my experience, like because I've been in it, right? Like even some of those MTEs and the like holidays for college basketball are like terribly attended. Like
Yeah.
unless you're
I
going
mean,
to Hawaii because that's gonna have the top of the top,
or
like
like Phil Knight, I feel like pulls a lot of fans usually. Like there's a few, the
right.
better known ones, I think, pull fans. Or like college bowl games, for example, like those aren't
Thing.
announced and then played a week later. Like they're announced and planned and played a month later. So that if fans do want to go, there's time to like schedule it.
Yeah,
Um, which I think is like I think that is a big factor, like just logistics.
right,
Also it's 2024 and like no one can afford anything. So like who's buying a flight to Vegas at the last minute near Christmas?
right,
Um, if we're being so for real. I mean, like maybe affordability is a good thing in this scenario. The other thing that is like maybe a hot take, but I think could be an interesting answer is like, do they play the semifinals and final games at home? Like it would mean that there's like a disadvantage to one of the teams. Maybe it's like a coin toss
right,
of like one of the teams gets a home game and that way it's better attended. Like I'm sure some of the fans would be or some of the teams would be like I don't know how that would work logistically, but if ticket prices and fans being at that game is a priority, maybe they're not all played
right.
in
Maybe,
Vegas.
maybe you have this be because like also today the NBA announced changes to the All-Star game format, which are super complex. I didn't spend enough time with it to give a good comment on it, but maybe you want to still maintain this excitement, which I think you have done a pretty good job of by having the cup round robin play happen in November, December, but then you don't have the championship game until All-Star weekend, right? Have those
Ooh,
two semifinal games played at the higher seeds home venue, have the championship game played on maybe
like the Thursday.
Sunday night, Thursday night, Friday night, that
Yeah,
way you have the guys who are in the All-Star game who play for that team able to compete in the All-Star game itself. I think
I like that. Yeah.
Adam Silver, if you
I
think
do.
that, bro, you owe me money, man. Don't
Yeah.
steal my idea.
I do. I just think that there's like solutions like that should be maybe thought if that's like a concern or if they like want to really like milk everything they can out of the NBA Cup because we were saying like it answers some of the challenges that they've been facing, but I don't think they're like all the way there.
Right. But then I do think there is that would be problematic because of I think you lose the momentum if it's such a gap between you have the cup games and then you wait a month and then you have the championship game. There could be some
Yeah.
momentum there. You know, people can get hurt between in the games after that and not be you're expecting to see in this case Giannis go against SGA and maybe one of them gets hurt and then you lose your whole momentum for that. I don't know. That's why they pay
Yeah.
the
I don't
big
know.
bucks and we're just, sitting here talking about it.
We're armchair CMOs. We are backseat marketing to the people actually trying to answer these questions. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's like it's I'm actually like a little bit excited about some of the problems that the NBA is facing because I think there is a lot of room for innovation. Like I think there's a lot of exciting things that they can do. The NBA has I think always been like a little bit more modern league, a little bit more innovative league, a little bit more willing to take risks than like maybe the MLB, for example. Um, so I feel like they're gonna find something interesting to do.
But
We'll see.
as a fan of the NBA, this was the first time that I've like really felt like more compelled to care and watch NFL games in my whole life, in my 38 years of life. Like I've always been an NBA guy. And like I cared about football because when I grew up and I didn't have cable, like Sundays was literally CBS and Fox, like NFL games. That's all I had to watch. But the NBA was like on NBC was the time where I was like really locked in, right? Because growing up in Virginia, I had to watch the formerly known as the Washington Command. I mean, the current Washington Commanders. Like those are the only games I got to see when I was growing up, but because of the local broadcast. But so I think that has a lot to do with the product. And it's interesting, it's interesting perspective, right? We talked a little bit about this. Like, I think this is our first time like doing in-depth conversation about NIL implications so far, which is a big deal. Um, but it's interesting to see how the dynamic has kind of sort of it's the same thing that's happening to both sports, but it's affecting one of them more than it's affecting the other. And I think that that's just a testament to how football is because you need 52 people on a play on a team to have success. Less individuals can carry a whole football team compared to and to I mean to basketball, right? So I think that that's interesting to also look at. Both sports are dealing with this NIL issue, not issue, but like change. But it's clear that a change in the way that people come up through those leagues and come up through the sports as young people to becoming professionals has been affected differently.
Yeah, I've it's so interesting because I'm trying to like formulate a thought and I might not get there live. I might need like a week to think about it. Um, is like every team has like one or two players who like goes off every game. And that's kind of a known thing. And that's kind of like that dynamic you're talking about. Like you could be on a terrible like Jared McCain has been playing well,
Mhm.
but the Sixers overall are doing terribly. So like I'm not really that interested in like watching the Sixers unless you're like a big Jared McKean fan. I know he's hurt, so that's not great for them. Um, but I'm trying to wrap my head around like what is causing that dynamic. Because something else we were talking about earlier is like rule changes that support the product. Like there's a couple examples I can think. Well, the one example that keeps coming up in the NBA is like pushing back the 3 point line to make 3 point shots like less of a focus. MLB obviously realized that the games were going on too long, and so that was like the kind of the biggest weakness of their product to fans. And so they added that clock between, I think it's between pitches. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but they added a clock basically like speed up the games. And I noticed it, like I went to games this summer and I noticed a difference. So just like a few examples of rule changes that impact the product. Um, and I'm trying to figure out if there's something there that can help with that dynamic you were talking about of like the whether it's like one superstar on a team or a team dynamic, like in the way that they do drafting or salary caps or like I don't know what would do it, but some like genius economist or something should come up with.
But that's the problem. The nerds are in it too much already. The nerds are the ones that have
It's
made
too
it.
data oriented already.
It's the problem. I don't know.
Is that your argument? Did you freeze?
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
know.
you froze.
I froze on your computer.
Yeah, you froze for me, but it might have been my problem.
Technical
Um,
difficulty.
wait, but you were arguing that it's like the data is already too big of a part of it.
The nerds are. That's what
Don't
Lulu.
call them nerds.
Sorry, nerds. I don't think nerds is a bad word. Like if you're a nerd,
You saying like the data people?
yes, the data people, the data
Okay.
analytics, data scientists.
Well, I don't know. I mean, what do you think that like Moneyball, that whole data overhaul ruined baseball?
I don't know enough about it. I watched the movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember it that well. I feel like
I mean, like in NFL, my dad and I were just talking about this the other day. Just, more and more teams are going for it on fourth down as a result of the data because like they have like live updates showing them the odds of like getting the first down on the fourth down. Um,
now
which
that
I think is making football more exciting.
I shout out to the nerds for that. Like that actually,
Yeah.
that's actually
So I don't know. I think the nerds should just take a different angle and figure out some rule changes to make basketball more exciting.
that's an interesting thing. And I'm saying this just for a point of reference for me personally, but I don't know if it has any like weight or meaning. But like just the fact that what you just said makes the game more relatable for people like me who are fans of sports, fans of the NFL at different varying levels, casual or diehard. But growing up and even into young adulthood playing Madden, like going for it on fourth down is like a
More
no-brainer.
fun.
Like it's
Yeah.
like you keep it spicy, how you keep it interesting, how you're like you're either desperate because you need to make it like you need to make this to like keep the game close, or you know you're gonna win and you're gonna stunt and you're saying I'm going for a fourth down because I'm gonna beat you anyway. But like the
Like,
fact that that makes you feel like, oh, I'm just as me and Dan Campbell are like we're the same guy.
mm,
Like, going on for a fourth down, like that's easy. Like,
you know what I think is interesting? Like, this is definitely me being a nerd, not in a data way, even though I am also like a little bit of a data nerd. Like, I'm so interested in how like literally the rules of the game can impact, like rules of the game could be considered marketing. Like, this is me being a marketing
mhm.
nerd. Like, it's like product marketing, but like, or like product development. But it's so crazy to think that like you could change the way the game is played and that helps you sell more tickets. Um, I saw actually did see one proposal about changing the point values. It was like making 2 points worth three and a 3 point worth four, so that the point differential was different. Because right now it's worth 50% more points, but if it was three and four, it'd only be worth 33% more points. So there's less of a incentive, which that would like totally shake up. That'd be like a massive shake up to the game of basketball. But I love that from like a mathematics like perspective, how that would make the game very different. I also just thought of something like if you made the hoop smaller, like the literal ring smaller, like you'd have to shoot closer range shots because you'd see for like fewer threes fall. Like I'm so curious whether we'll see any rule changes like that go through. I mean, I think the most simple is like moving the 3 point line back, but
Yeah, definitely a good
yeah,
example. I think definitely to our discussion, right? Like we're talking about how do you solve these problems from a marketing standpoint, and it really is product development. Is in this case the sports product is the product. So how are you
the
trying to
product, yeah.
and change it in a way that's going to make it more marketable. I think that's the answer to the question. So you got to ask people, ask fans, ask whoever, get some insights. Before we go, because we're talking about adding three pointers and changing, do you know what Rock and Jock is?
No.
You never heard of MTV Rock and Jock?
No, it sounds dirty.
So back in my day, um, MTV would have these celebrity basketball games where they would have like a lot of the young hip basketball players, but also like actors and musicians play in a celebrity basketball game. But I bring it up is because at some point they used to have like this really high basket, like you had to throw it up really high. It was worth like 20 points or something like that.
Yeah,
Go look it up. I'm not saying that's a good example or we should or they should do that because it's
like
kind
that they should do that. It's just an example of, yeah.
yes. All
Or
right.
like,
What you got?
yeah, I don't know. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, that was good. This was a good one. Good talk.
Different stuff this week. Interesting stuff this week. I feel like we touched on like a lot of disparate topics.
That we're all connected.
It's always the case. Endemic brands. Somehow it all leads together. All right. Thanks, Vaughn. See you next week.
Next week. So next week is the week before Christmas. So we'll have one more before Christmas, and we got to come back after Christmas because we got to talk about Beyonce.
You're right.
Notice how I didn't say about the game or anything. I said we got to talk about Beyonce
Notable.
because like it was a big deal that they asked to extend the halftime for her.
Oh, I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Let's put a pin in
Okay.
it. Put a pin.
Okay. All right.
All right, Jules. See you later.
See you next week.
All right, bye.